what we're going to look at doing now is drawing an actual image to the screen. Now this is very straightforward, and there are a couple of things that we're going to look at actually doing. Drawing an image to the screen. Firstly, we need the asset, the image to draw to the screen. So I'm going to go on the contents and I'm going to add a new folder, and I'm just going to call it imgs for images, and then I'm going to right click again and add a existing item. Now this allows us to add any pre-existing item, i.e. a sound, a video or an image, and all you have to do is locate the image you want to add. I've already got all this set up with this boat image, and I'm just going to click on add, and it adds our image. And now we need to load this image into a variable. So firstly we need to declare our variable. So all images that are 2D dimensional, so it's a texture 2D, and I'm going to call it boat texture, like so. And then of course in the load content I'm going to do boat texture equals content.load. This time just try and think what we would pass in here, bearing in mind this is the actual type of asset we are loading. Well, if you guessed texture 2D, you did well, because we are loading a texture 2D. And then here, can you work out what needs to go? Images, boat, like so. And that will load in our boat texture into our boat image into our boat texture variable. And now to draw it, well, it's very straightforward. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to make the sprite text, not output, just by putting 2 forward slashes right there, and it will make the lines not run. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go sprite batch.draw, not drawstring, so draw, open bracket. Immediately it wants a texture 2D, at which case we pass in our boat texture variable, which we declared and then loaded the boat.png image into. Then it asks for a rectangle. Now if you press down, you'll notice it will also accept a vector 2. I'm going to show you a rectangle first. I'm going to say a new rectangle, 0, 0, and I want it to draw at the width and height of our boat texture. And I can access this by going boat texture.width, boat texture.height, and then color.white. Of course, color.white is the colour that it's going to draw it with, and if we draw it with white it won't change the colour at all. And you can see it's drawn our boat in the top left quadrant of the screen. So let's say I draw this at 100, 100, and you see it's moved our boat. Now using a rectangle does give us an advantage, because it means we can change our size of our image. So let's say I wanted to stretch the image on the horizon. Instead of drawing at the boat texture's height, I could enter 200, and it would draw the texture 200 pixels high. As you can see, it stretched it out. Or I could make the width, let's say 400, and it would stretch out the width of the object and draw it to 400 pixels. And that is one advantage you can do with a rectangle that you can't do with the general scale modifier. But anyway, I'm going to convert it back to a vector 2, a new vector 2, vector 2, and I'm going to enter it at 200, 300, and then it will draw it at the position like so. Now we're going to look at some of the overloads and modifiers. Now one difference is, let's say we want to add a modifier to this. Before we can do anything, we need to enter null here. Now what this variable does is it allows us to select quadrants of the image that we want to draw. Now entering null will draw the whole image, but let's say I enter a new rectangle, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. What will happen there? Well, what it will do is it will specify the part of the object we want to draw. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to load up our image, our boat image. So it will create a rectangle at the locations in this instance at 10, 10. So let me just find 10, 10. If I can see anything. So it will start off there, and then it will create a rectangle 10 wide and high there, and it will copy that and draw it. If we enter null, it takes the whole image. So if I entered 0, 10, 40 and 60, it would start at the position 0, 10 and have something 40 wide and 60 high, and that's, as you can see, what has happened. So that is the use of this variable here. This, as you can see, it's called a source rectangle. But I'm going to set that to null. Now, let's say I want to rotate it. Again, I'm going to in this case, I'm going to go math helper dot pi over 2, and that will rotate it by 90 degrees because we're working in radians. The origin. Now, let's say I want to rotate this object in the center, and of course, the center would be the width of the object divided by 2 and the height of the object divided by 2. So I can go a new vector 2 boat texture.width divided by 2 boat texture.height divided by 2. Okay? And then I'm going to finish off with a sprite effect.none. In fact, no, I'm not, because nextly comes the scale 0f, 1f, sorry. Sprite effects.none, and the layer 1f, 0f, sorry. So if I was to draw this, you will see the object is being rotated at 45 degrees. Now I could, where I've put math helper pi over 2, I could pass in the rotation variable, which we built in the last tutorial, and that will of course make the object rotate. And changing the speed, the amount that we add to the rotation variable will affect the speed the object rotates at. And I've already explained the sprite effects, what that does. Again, we've got the scale modifier, so if I set that to 5, it will draw it 5 times larger, like so. And finally, the colour one, which I've generally been avoiding because it's quite straightforward. If I was to enter red, it would draw it with a red tint. And as you can see, it looks black because in this instance adding red to blue will have that effect. And really that is all there is to do with drawing using a sprite batch.draw and sprite batch.drawString. And those two things will really be the only real thing you actually ever do with a sprite batch. And hopefully you can see we now know how to rotate an object. We can pass in different sprite effects to flip it. We can rotate around the center of the object, or in fact any other position. We can, with an image, we can select the region of the actual original image we want to draw to screen by passing in a rectangle here, and we can alter the scale and other things. The next thing to have a look at, and to get you onto really early, is multiple sprite batches and their uses. And that is what we're going to have a look at in the next tutorial.